Welcome to Deakin. Thanks for venturing out on a cold, dark afternoon. Hopefully you've had a sausage roll to warm you up. My name is Simon Han. I'm the CEO of DeakinCo. DeakinCo has been formed from the recent merger of Deakin Prime, which has had a long 25-year track record in corporate education and training, which has been merged with Deakin Digital, which is a more recent endeavour by Deakin, looking at a very innovative approach to how micro-credentials can help with both workforces and individuals around preparing workforce capability for jobs of the future. We brought the two businesses together because we're passionate about working with organisations and individuals to adapt to the future of work. And the changes in jobs and the types of skills and how we're going to acquire those skills and use those skills in a far more agile and effective way than what has ever been required before. So the format for tonight is I will shortly invite our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Jane Den Hollander AO, to launch the report. I'll then ask David Rumbans and Jess Marazi from Deloitte Access Economics, who have been the brains behind the report, to come up and present their key findings and insights. And then Jane and David will be joined by Mark Stone, the CEO of the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Matt Tyndall from LinkedIn, who, congratulations to Matt, found out yesterday on LinkedIn that he's just been promoted to Head of Country for Australia and New Zealand. So congratulations, Matt. The power of your company. We commissioned this report because we believe how we develop and use soft skills is critical to business performance, both now, but in particular, making sure we're well equipped for the jobs of the future. My sense is that workers in the future will need to take much greater ownership of the soft skills required, be agile and adaptive in how they acquire those skills. And the real reasoning or force behind this report was trying to take the conversation from soft skills around being that bucket of skills where, yes, we know they're important, but we're not really sure how we get them, how we develop them. They're hard to put a ring fence around, to putting them front and centre in the conversation. And with what we're doing with micro-credentials, we believe providing data and measurement to help with both productivity, career advancement, and most importantly, enabling success in jobs of the future. And we talk about workforce and jobs of the future, but in reality, that is now. So I've been very pleased to work with Deloitte Access Economics on this report. I'd now like to invite David and Jess I would now like to invite the Vice-Chancellor to come up and launch the report. Before I invite David and Jess up to talk about the report. Thank you.
I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay respects to elders past, present and future. And I acknowledge and pay my respects to any Indigenous person, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander, who is with us here this afternoon. And I thank them for their tolerance and for their welcoming of us to country. John Maney, partner Deloitte Access Economics, Matt Tyndale, great new title at LinkedIn, fantastic to see, and Mark Stone, great friend, Mark Stone AM, CEO of Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I acknowledge Stuart Hamilton, who is a Deakin Council member, and I thought Stuart walked in. Stuart is here. Yeah, Stuart, you are here. I thought maybe you've gone to a different event. No, you're here. And who is, of course, chair of the Deakin Digital Board and has helped get us to this point here. Guests, one and all, it's fantastic to see a full room. It's very nice to welcome you to Deakin Downtown. That's what we call this place. It's not Docklands, it's downtown. It's our city centre. It's not a university campus yet. It's a city centre. I think it is a campus of the future. Time will tell that these places will mostly be busy between 6 at night and 3 in the morning. And that's when the students will be here, and they'll most probably be upstairs, and they'll probably be with industry. It's very nice also. It's the first event of DeakinCo. And to Simon and the team, to Stuart, to Simon and the whole team, it's fantastic that we have DeakinCo, which is a merger which combines Deakin Prime, which you know, a fantastic track record, 25 years of history in corporate education, corporate training, together with the wannabe Deakin Digital, a company of the future around credentials, and we've brought them together under one simple banner, DeakinCo, to ensure that we cover all of the needs of the communities that we serve. And it's very nice that we've managed to get there with such a slick name and only 12 months of arguing about the logo and the title. So tonight we launched Soft Skills for Business Success. DeakinCo engaged Deloitte Access Economics to undertake the analysis of soft skills and their importance. It's a report that will inform national debate, we hope, around the issues that is of critical importance to Australia's future workforce as it evolves in a workplace that is being transformed by new ideas and by things outside our country, new products, new processes, new services, and the competition from everyone. So we're on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, and it's fair to say that many of us think that probably our current and future workforces are less prepared than we probably need to be to take our place in the competitive world. So the fourth industrial revolution is changing the way education is delivered, accessed, assessed, and perceived. And I've been talking a bit of late saying, people, dry your tears. You are very fortunate to be alive in the fourth industrial revolution 4.0. To use the German terms, it was a term defined by the Germans to keep their place in Europe. So what was the original revolution? And in 1844, for the historians in the room, it was the Gutenberg Bible. And the Gutenberg Bible was published in Gutenberg on the first automated printing machine. And 20 years later, the monasteries were back to being what they'd always been, except for this brief period of commercial need, where they were religious entities. And all the interpreters and all the writers and all of that big industry across the whole of Europe was gone. They mostly died of starvation. They were driven out of monasteries because they were no longer needed, because people learned to read and write in the blink of an eye, and the rest is pretty much history from that particular Bible. Millions of people lost their jobs. Relative to today, much more than the disruption we're currently going through. Even though we're a much bigger population, it's actually happening slightly slower. Everyone says it's faster, faster, faster. Well, imagine how fast it would be if there's only one job earner. There are 11 or 19 children, which was the average in those days. You have no social security. There is no antibiotic. So for the jobs of the future, I say for those of us in the fourth industrial revolution, in the 4.0, we know that the jobs of a lifetime won't last a lifetime, but we live in an environment where we can take these things into our own hands. And particularly to the people in the room who are under 50, under 40, under 30, I dream of being any of those ages. This is a great time, I think, for you to be optimistic and to say, well, what can I do? We know that there will be multiple career shifts, but then I've had multiple career shifts. I'm sure Mark would tell you about his multiple career shifts, as can Simon, who is now running a NewCo, with all the things and all the skills that you need of a NewCo. We need to worry less about what the actual jobs will be, I think, and more about equipping our people to be thoughtful, to be entrepreneurial, and to be forward-looking. The skills with the longest shelf life will be, as they've always been, the uniquely human skills: teamwork, cultural empathy, communication, EI, emotional intelligence, problem-solving, critical thinking. These are the skills that in the past were often denigrated. I certainly learned none of those as a young scientist doing science. It was never considered important. There's not much about the Krebs cycle, if you're a biochemist, that I don't know. Completely useless today. But the soft skills are to be critical, to write, to argue, to have a view and to think about anyone says and say, is that really true? Could that possibly be wrong? These are the skills that I think we need, that the future employers will need. In an age, I think, of quantities of data that are beyond us, information is beyond us, just keeping up with a few things on your phone is almost impossible these days in terms of the amount of news that comes up. You know, I decided when President Trump got elected that I'd follow his journey. I've conceded defeat on that. I just simply cannot keep up with it, and I only occasionally now jump in when something really horrifying happens. My God, that can't be right, because you can't keep up with it. So how do we deal nimbly? How will the next generation sitting in the front so much, them, how will you, with the ambiguous knowledge that you're about to have, the accumulation of facts, how will you take all of that and turn it into something useful for the communities that you will serve? So soft skills are getting the attention they deserve. That leads us to credentials. Credentials will provide a solution for how we recognise some of the skills that people acquire in their jobs, in their work, in the things that they do in their community. I think credentials will help businesses allocate the right training, the right development at the right time for the right person. And so just as iTunes unbundled songs from a CD, the work of DeakinCo will enable a qualification to be disaggregated into its component parts. Industry knowledge, cultural knowledge, professional skills, leadership skills, on-the-job training, evidence of achievement, networking opportunities, team building, converting experience, individual experience and learning throughout a lifetime into something that is recognisable and useful for employability. We can all hope for that, and if we all think about that, doesn't matter how long, just 6 months into a job you will develop skills that are transferable. All of this will take us to a brave new world, I think. And I think, we're a university, we are not immune. I'm absolutely clear that Deakin's strategy to go to the digital frontier, education for the jobs of the future, research that makes a difference, but at the digital frontier has been the right strategy because you can sense it in the air. Industrial Revolution 4.0 is alive and well. And we are not going to be a music company owned by an IT company. We are not going to be a transportation company that's part of a software package at Uber. And we're certainly not going to be a hotel with no people in it. So we will continue to educate the people of the future for the jobs of their future. And hopefully we'll do it in a way that is useful and helpful and affordable for the communities we serve. It's very nice to be here. Congratulations to DeakinCo and from Stuart of Council that we actually have a company that is fit for purpose. To all of you, congratulations for coming. I hope you enjoy this afternoon's event, and I hope that what we do together will be useful to the communities that we collectively serve in this great nation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. If I could now ask David and Jess to come forward and take us through some of the insights from soft skills for business success. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming this afternoon, and thank you to Simon and to Jane for the opportunity to do this work with DeakinCo on the importance of soft skills. It's a topic that really fits in with an important part of Australia's economic agenda. We know that investing in education and skills is a really important part of Australia's future economic success. And it's becoming increasingly important as the structure of the economy changes over time due to technology and moving towards greater technology and greater knowledge sector or knowledge worker jobs over time. Formal quals and technical skills are a key part of that, but they're only part of the requirements that we need going forward in order to achieve that economic success. We know that soft skills and personal attributes are an equally important part of human capital going forward. So in the report that Deloitte Access Economics has put together, we have compiled research on soft skills for business success, and it's through a compilation of looking at a range of literature on the topic, through consulting with industry groups, forward-looking analysis of the jobs market, how the jobs market will look going forward, and also an analysis of job matching tools such as LinkedIn and Workable. So Jess and I will go through just some of the key highlights, and you've all been provided copies of the report on your seats. So firstly, what are we talking about with soft skills? And there are a variety of definitions. So outside formal qualifications and technical skills are only part of the picture. And one of the classifications that we've got here up on the screen is actually produced through the World Economic Forum, which produced 16 crucial proficiencies in education that were identified, and 10 of those 16 are non-technical. So you've got things like literacy, numeracy, technical skills, but then you've got a range of attributes: critical thinking, problem solving, communication, curiosity, adaptability, leadership. Things which are important elements of education, and as we know, important elements of how education is applied in the workforce. And businesses value these attributes. We know that businesses are looking for these attributes, and increasingly in the sorts of jobs that the structure of the economy is going for. And sometimes these attributes are valued on their own, and sometimes it's in combination with technical skills. So how our technical skills are actually applied in a teamwork sense or in a leadership sense or an adaptability sense. So what we're talking about here is not a new concept. So businesses, have a good idea of what works to help promote their business and promote their interest. And when recruiting, businesses also have a good idea of what they're looking for. And as an example of that, I had a look at the Deloitte Access Economics recruitment criteria. So when Deloitte Access Economics is recruiting graduates or junior staffers, yes, we do look at academic records and relevant work experience. That's how we develop our shortlist. But how do we pick between that shortlist? And so I've happened to pick out the Deloitte Access Economics interview guide, which a few people in the front row here are probably quite familiar with over the last couple of years, as to what sort of questions that we are looking for and other organisations like us are looking for. And you might think, they're going to ask about monetary policy or econometrics or nerdy economic stuff like that. But not true. Only one question on technical attributes. There's questions on coachability and willingness to learn. Questions on teamwork. So take me through a situation where you developed an effective working relationship with a team member. Describe a major decision you had to make. So problem solving. Adaptability. How do you manage pressure effectively and cope with setbacks? So these are the important questions that businesses like Deloitte are looking at to kind of separate the people who are going to be effective in that role versus those that aren't. And on the technical side, it's listed as an optional question. If anyone is coming to an interview with Deloitte Access Economics, it is one that I do ask, so don't get off scot-free. These are important attributes for business. How do we go about measuring how important? One aspect is trying to identify, what sort of jobs are these soft skills important for? And so one thing we did in the report is try to identify those sorts of jobs which are soft skills intensive and those which are less intensive. I mean, there's very few jobs where these attributes are not important at all, but there's some which are more than others. So the more intensive ones are manager occupations, professionals, technicians, community and personal services, which is such a growing part of the economy, sales representatives, a lot of administration jobs. Less intensive, some of the trade areas, clerical, labourers, machinery operators, classes less intensive. And if you look at that split, where is the economy going and how has it been travelling over time? Well, the soft skills intensive jobs are growing at 2.5 times the rate of the other jobs. So it's not necessarily a surprise. It's the transformation towards knowledge intensive areas of work. And if you follow that transformation, then we're looking at around 63% of the economy being in soft skills intensive jobs by 2030. So it's a significant shift. It's being enabled by technology. It's being enabled by greater globalisation. Sometimes it's consumer preferences and ageing, with a lot more expenditure in the health sector and the various skills that are required there in terms of caring roles and support roles. It's also a feature is increasingly the people are embarking on career changes over time, and partly that is technology, but partly it's also a bit of a change of mindset, that people are not necessarily looking to do the one career over their lifetime. And so what's enduring when you change careers? Technical skills, and not necessarily. It's the soft skills, it's the business skills that are more transferable than technical skills. So why do they matter? How can we quantify? Well, it's really about delivering productivity for businesses. So businesses value human capital that will deliver services for the business. So in looking to try and quantify the importance of soft skills, it's really looking at that productivity gap. And then there are, we refer to in the report a number of studies which show there is a productivity gap between businesses that have a higher attributes of soft skills compared to those that have lesser. So studies across the manufacturing sector, Australian study focused on teamwork skills, and across, it's not an extensive literature, but across those there is a productivity gap, and it's of about 3 percentage points. So if you just equate that against the size of the average business, and equate that productivity to revenue, it's something like $90,000 of revenue per in terms of the average size of business for those that have a higher level of soft skills. Other literature we've looked at is, there's higher levels of emotional judgment associated with lower levels of staff turnover. Innovation has long been recognised as important to business success. So, there's a series of literature that's out there that we've looked at capturing in the report. Now, I'm going to pass over to Jess Mizrahi, who was the lead researcher on the report, and Jess is going to take us through a few of the other key findings from the report.
Thanks, David. So we know that businesses value soft skills, but then the question is, how does that translate? As it turns out, it translates in what businesses are looking for in their employees. So we looked at over 168,000 job advertisements through Workable, which is a job matching tool. We found that 71% of businesses are listing just communication skills as an attribute that they need in their workers. And you see listed there a range of other skills. It's not just about communications. In fact, it's a wide range of skills. And certainly anyone who's ever looked at a job ad will know that these skills come up again and again and again in terms of what businesses are looking for. But it's not just in professional services jobs or managerial jobs that you might expect. There's some surprises in there. Nannies and babysitters. Actually, very soft skill intensive profession. People want their babysitters to be ethical. Makes a bit of sense. Don't eat the peanut butter. What about in creative industries, such as the arts or media? Well, actually, digital skills are very important in the creative industries, but so are communication skills. It's even more important for leadership. We looked at a survey of worldwide digital firms, and you'd think that in digital firms, right, technical skills are crucial. Actually, in leadership positions, in digital firms, most HR managers and executives thought that soft skills were more important than technical skills for leadership success. We also talked about how some of these skill needs are evolving over time. We talked to Cisco as part of the consultations for this report. They made a really interesting point about how communication skills used to be about face-to-face communication, so just getting up and talking to someone. But that skill is evolving very quickly in a world where suddenly you need to talk to someone who's in a different time zone, in a different culture, where 4 other people are talking simultaneously. What we need to do is changing and evolving very rapidly. So, are we meeting this demand? Evidence on this is actually quite scattered, because the short answer is there is not a lot of consistent measurement about how many soft skills we have as individuals. That's partially a problem to do with measurement, and partially a problem to do with not many of us are really very sure whether we have them or not and whether we can claim them or not. Overall, we think it's a positive picture. For example, we looked at LinkedIn data which showed that Australians were more likely to report a range of soft skills compared to some counterparts such as in Singapore and in the UK. Certainly our graduates seem to be performing very well. A study by Oliver et al. Found that more than 90% of graduate supervisors thought that their graduates displayed a range of skills like problem solving, emotional judgment, teamwork, and ethics. There is, of course, some variation by profession. For example, a 2013 Deloitte Access Economics survey considered how STEM professionals or the STEM industry in general displayed certain characteristics. and overwhelmingly, employers thought that their STEM professionals had more problem-solving and critical thinking skills than their non-STEM professionals, even though they were working in the same organisation. So there's clearly some ups and downs in different professions and in different industry groups. But there's still a gap, and it's actually fairly significant. 3 in 4 Australian organisations report having a workforce skills gap, and 1 in 3 Australian employers say that there's a soft skills gap. Even at an entry level, the number is 1 in 4, which is to say that even new graduates, 1 in 4 employers are saying that they lack the skills needed for workplace success. That's only going to get bigger over time. As David talked about, we're seeing this evolution in the workforce. So surely if our demand is going to continue to increase, the question is how we continue to increase supply. Businesses spend a lot of money on getting the right people and making sure that they have the right skills for success. $7 billion is the annual cost that we estimate that businesses spend on recruitment. And yet, they're looking for soft skills. How are they finding these skills? LinkedIn data interestingly showed us that less than 1% of Australians are listing a soft skill on their LinkedIn profile, which, as we all know, is a key criteria for many recruiters who start looking at LinkedIn. I wouldn't mind doing a quick show of hands. How many people have a LinkedIn profile? Okay, now put down your hand if you do not have a soft skill listed on your profile. Communication skills. Oh, you guys are much better than the Australian part. Might be the room we're talking to. The cost of getting that recruitment wrong to business can be quite substantive. So a 2017 study actually found that the cost of replacing a poor hire within 6 months could be 2.5 times their salary. So clearly trying to find the right person is critical. It's costly both when we try and find them, and it's costly if we get it wrong. And even on an ongoing basis, training and development is worth $4 billion to Australian businesses and institutions annually. And that's particularly important in a changing environment where training and recruitment is not just a thing that businesses do to develop their staff, it's also a key attractor for many people who are looking to develop skills on the job. Thankfully, there's a solution. So credentials, and particularly credentials for soft skills, are not a new idea in the sense that we've had credentials in education for a very long time. Degrees, diplomas, even smaller credentials have existed for quite some time. But even looking at the evidence, we just found that there is very little, in fact, looking at measurement of soft skills in particular. That's because it can be hard to objectively measure and people honestly aren't sure. So credentials for soft skills can offer 2 benefits for business and for the economy more broadly. Firstly, as a signalling tool, we talked about that $7 billion cost of recruitment. Well, what if you could just say, I know that person has communication skills because they have a credential for it. It makes the process for business significantly easier and cheaper. Secondly, as a tool for measurement, if you've got a $4 billion spend on training and development, how do you actually measure the effectiveness of that $4 billion spend? Is it by surveying your staff and saying, did you like the course? Did you learn a thing? Maybe they'll say yes, but is that truly an objective measure of your return on investment? Credentials could help to track progress over time, measure how staff are developing and how programs are facilitating that. So we were delighted to work with DeakinCo on this important report, and I'm really looking forward to Simon introducing the panel. Thanks for your time.
very much to Jess and David. If I could ask the 4 panel members to come forward, please, and take a seat on the stage. Thank you. So, having introduced the panel, so I'll just jump straight into some questions, and I'll try and save some time for some questions from the audience. So, if you've got anything you'd like to ask, please store up the question. This is an initial question for all the panel in turn. Just from your perspectives, one of the key findings from the report is that soft skill intensive jobs will grow 2.5 times faster than other jobs, and that by 2030 will represent almost 2/3 of all jobs. From your perspective, or from your perspectives, I suppose, what do you see as one or two of the key implications of this shift in emphasis towards soft skills?
Shift in emphasis, well, it'll mean the degree is different. You know, if you think about 56,000 students are enrolled at Deakin right now, so what are we teaching them? It would be pointless to say that we would teach them content all of the time, because what would be, ask me anything about the Krebs cycle to this day, I can name the enzymes and draw the structures in my sleep. That is of no use because I could show you on my phone all of that data. Ask me a question about how you would use some of that to think about a problem today would be a different thing. So how do we give our people those skills? We've just been doing some work today. Cora's here with one of our big public transport companies about train drivers and how you skill them. What is one of the jobs of the future? Well, it's people who do things where they're people. So train drivers, you think you'd have autonomous trains. No, you won't. People don't feel confident in groups being on something that's careering along at 150 miles or whatever it is an hour. How do you give them the skills they need to deal with a thing that goes at 300 kilometres an hour? It will, promise you, go at that speed in the state one day, but also be customer driven. I think that's actually quite an interesting, complicated thing. And how do you keep those skills up to date? In a university, how do you make sure that an engineer is customer focused, but also knows that when cement is mixed in the wrong thing, you can actually kill people because the bridge will collapse the first day there's rain, is a challenging thing. So the challenges for a business like ours and our assurances of learning are profound, absolutely profound. How do we give people all of those things that well, there you are, that David, you put on the screen, I think is actually one of the big, and I was thinking, could we assure all of those things against all of our degrees in the emphasis that's needed? That's a challenge for 2020.
Can I suggest a couple of different words to give my example? Soft skills, for me, equals street smart. And you can't get street smarts if you don't spend some time on the street. So for me, the change that needs to occur to get to the point we want to get to is to make sure the students are not just in the classroom, but they're in the business or the industry as well. And that's, to me, not just the responsibility of Deakin University or DeakinCo to find that opportunity. From someone like myself, an employer, I think the onus is equally on me to give the opportunity for those students to get some street smarts. And it's no good, as the research has shown, me whinging about I can't get enough applicants that have got the street smarts that I want if I'm not willing to give them some real world experience before they come out applying for that job. So the collaboration between a DeakinCo, the university more broadly, and organisations like mine and industry and business is essential if we're going to get to a point where we've got people that have got soft skills or street smarts to be able to walk in and do the job. So I think that's part of the change we've got to see from the, as David described it, the professional development, but there's also got to be some practical on the street experience.
I think about from my experience as well. So on two fronts, really, it's really putting it, giving them the value that they're worth. I think they have been not derided, but I think they've almost been ignored a little bit over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And this actually came into personally in a big way recently with me. I've got a son, Charlie, who's 15. Going to year 9 this year, and we were having a discussion about his elective subjects, and one of them that he was invited to do, very proud of, was applied philosophy, which is all about leadership. It was about critical thinking, problem solving, persuasion, discussion, communication. And he was invited to do that. The other one was around sort of STEM, science, technology. And this one was specifically around technology, data management, coding, SQL, robotics, AI. And we had this discussion. He was saying, that's the one I want to do because that is the future. And I'm actually saying, well, no. Philosophy and all these areas, critical thinking, that's the future. And it's like, Dad, no. Everyone, when I get to your age, is going to be coding. I went, no. Everyone, when you get to my age, computers are going to be coding and you will need to be able to think and doing this. So I'm having these discussions with my 15-year-old son about subjects that have been taught for thousands of years, telling him that that's going to be the future. So I think we've got to get back to a place where we're putting more emphasis on that, really heightening them. It's very interesting to see that from LinkedIn, and Jess mentioned this, that only 1% of people, members on LinkedIn, put soft skills on their profile. 1%. Yet most of them put the technical skills. It just shows you how much value that we place on them. Yet most of the job applications have communication, what is it, 70% in the job application. So we haven't put two and two together yet. And I think we need to do it from an education perspective, we need to do it from an employment perspective, a measurement perspective, and really put those skills in the place that they deserve.
Just really interested to know who won that debate, you or your son.
Well, interestingly enough, my son won the debate. He did do philosophy for 2 weeks and said, no, I can't stand it. And I said, look, all right, that's fine, go and do it. But I am taking this home, I'm showing him this, and I'm telling him that I was right. So there you go.
I did biochemistry in my undergraduate degree and you had to do one breadth unit, and so I did philosophy of science. And I hated it for a little while, all crows are black. There was this unending thing about, are all crows black, and how will you know that all crows are black if you never see all the crows? You think, oh, who cares? By the end of the course, I loved it, but it taught me logic. And to this day, I've used all crows are black as a logic, as a way of discussing with people and being critical. And so, but I hated it at the time. Telling me he hates it, but he'll love it in 40 years' time. That will inspire him, of course.
It's a very pertinent fact. Very pertinent as well. So, you're thinking about 15-year-old, girls and boys at that age. You've got to compete against AI and robotics and apps, and you've got applied philosophy. I think it's actually incumbent on the education system as well to make it, fun and attractive as well in a very competitive education market.
I was just going to throw in adaptability as a key word. That the old model of where you study and then you apply that study for 40 years in work is no longer there, and so both in terms of workplace and educational institutions, there is going to be a need to be more flexible over time and to adapt and update skills. So the transition to the economy to greater knowledge worker focus is going to accelerate that trend. But it is something that our institutions, Deakin and others and governments are going to have to grapple with.
One of the other key findings was that the 45% gap between the demand for soft skills in job ads and the supply, if you like, that's coming from the employees applying for these jobs. Does anyone want to make a comment on why they think that's 45% is a big gap? Why there's such a long stretch between those two?
I think it's down to, I don't think it's that people don't have them. So, supply and demand, it's not that they don't have them, it's that they don't think they're valued as highly. So I think, again, for the LinkedIn profile, only 1% putting them on there. They don't think it's as highly valued. I think that will change. People will realise they are very, very valued. And we'll see that supply and demand gap shorten because people realise how valuable they are, and we'll start talking about them and putting them on their resumes and LinkedIn profiles.
I think there's an element of that, but Mark's report as well. Employers often complain people are not job ready, and so that's having that work experience, and so it is partly incumbent on employers to offer internships and opportunities. I know at Deloitte that as well as our graduate recruitment, like many other organisations will have a summer internship, and really that's there's a bunch of people who are roughly equal on technical skills, and so what you're sorting out is these other skills like ability to be coached and teamwork, and that's what you want to observe. Now, what we're talking about is how you observe that. So you can observe it once people arrive in the workplace or on an internship, but how do you observe it in an interview through a question or through a credential, and is it believable as well?
Another part of the opportunity here is to encourage our kids to get some work experience, even if it's outside of an internship type arrangement. And it's not sexy to be a McDonald's worker. It's not sexy to work in a kitchen in a restaurant. But you can pick up a lot of the skills we're talking about here through good work ethics, getting some experience on the street in those sorts of situations. I think another thought that came to me just preparing for the conversation here was around office politics. And I don't know that there's a subject or a course in office politics, but the moment you walk into an office can be the shop floor, it can be at Deloitte, in fact it can be in a prison for that matter. There is more intrigue and suspense and suspicion and backstabbing and toe cutting and kneecapping and garrotting that goes in an office environment every day than a mafia AGM. So part of that street smart is how do we prepare these graduates for not just the professional and technical skills they're going to need to do their job, but that office politics or that office environment they're coming into, and I'm using office generically there. And so I think that's part of something DeakinCo could maybe look at in the curriculum, is how to, not just the experience, but preparing people for that side of the political environment that exists in every business.
Do you think they'd survive the simulations we put them through? But just looking at that, I mean, Mark, the report talks about spending $7 billion a year on recruitment, $4 billion a year on training. Are we getting a good return on investment, or are businesses getting a good return on investment? What are your sort of employer members talking to you about in terms of some of the frustrations around recruiting for skill gaps and in particular soft skills?
Yeah. I think there's, I'll be very blunt here, I think our universities are doing an exceptional job from an education point of view. I think we've seen over the last little while that the vet system is stuffed. So there's two tiers of learning here. There's the university experience and the graduate situation. But in the vet sector, we've now got a situation federally where I think we've got our 12th minister in 7 years, and in Victoria we've got our 4th minister in 4 years. And that's from a skilling point of view, a looming problem for not just Victoria but for this country. And I think that's where we've failed. The universities have continued to improve and grow in their capacity to deliver, but the vet sector has been underperforming considerably over that period of time.
Very good. Matt, I know LinkedIn have been doing a piece of work called the LinkedIn Economic Graph, which is looking at some of these challenges on a sort of a global scale and I think working towards a solution. Do you want to just perhaps share a little bit around that piece of work and what you think it might be able to deliver for the workforce of the future? Sure.
If we had a solution, we'd be worth a lot more than we are. But we're looking at the data. So essentially, the thinking behind the economic graph, we've got a vision which is to fuel the global economy. Mission to make people more connected to the world's professionals, to make them more productive and successful. And a big part of that is what we call the economic graph. And if you think what fuels the economy on a global sense, there's all the workers and knowledge workers from a LinkedIn perspective. We are very professionally focused, so you've got that. Then you've got all the companies, so the opportunities there, and we're trying to map all the companies on the planet as well. All the opportunities within those companies, so the jobs, either vacant or otherwise. then the skills that you need. What skills do you need to get those opportunities? How do you get them, whether it's DeakinCo or other organisations, and then all the knowledge as well that is shared to make you more productive and successful, whether that's from The Age, whether that's from Mashable, The Economist, or wherever else. We've got all these nodes, if you like, that fuel the global economy. We want to map that digitally, and it's called LinkedIn, and then we literally want to step back, let all the information flow and help governments, universities, individuals make decisions that can make them more productive and successful. So we can see, for instance, if there's skills migrating from Australia to overseas and what's happening. We can hopefully show organisations like DeakinCo what the skills of the future may be to design courses for tomorrow rather than yesterday. I'm not suggesting you are, and I know you're not, but just that is the philosophy around it. And also to provide data and insights into government policy around that. And that's what we're trying to do, which will, again, hopefully come to many solutions sort of in the future.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Some of those emerging, what are the emerging dominant skills that people will need that are not hard, or not mathematics, not science, not literacy? Is an interesting question. Is it going to be communication, and if so, how? When you think of how people will communicate, you can now, I was doing an experiment with someone the other day. They were speaking Spanish and I was speaking English, and we were using our one phone to do the translation between the two of us. It was a miracle. And so what are the soft skills that you will need? What are the emerging skills around around the advantages of the future? And I don't think we're quite clear on that. Everyone's going to have certain skills, but not everyone's going to be a leader. What kind of leaders will we need? What are the skills? Is it someone, is it on a horseback into the valley of death, follow me, trust me, or is it something different? And I don't think we're as clear yet as we need to be in a very connected global multicultural economy, what that looks like.
We're not. And I mean, your opening, I was actually quite buoyed because it was very optimistic about the fourth industrial revolution. From what I've read, and I'm taking a little bit more of a pessimistic view in that there's 45% potential job displacement in the next 10 to 15 years. 45%. That is enormous. And to think of that happening, people will say, we'll have other jobs and we'll be a little bit higher and it'll be more consultative rather than sort of technical. But at 45% job displacement, 10 to 15 years is quite a scary thought. So having as much knowledge as we can around what the jobs are going to be, what the opportunities, what the skills we need, what the knowledge we have is vitally important.
Yeah, and learning from our history. This is our fourth go at this. The first industrial revolution, the British one, and history informs your future. If I could say one thing from where I am to those people under 40 in the room is always look at history. The first industrial revolution, which happened in Britain, it lasted 92 years, and they did everything from the steam engine to the electro to the telephone. It was all done in 90 years. And the interesting thing about that is when you go and look at the American history, is that the Americans went Republican under Jefferson, and the reason they voted for Jefferson because he said that globalisation was a bad thing, and that was the middle of the 18th century to the middle of the 19th to the middle of the 20th century, 1850 to and beyond. And you think, isn't that amazing? So the Americans withdraw and say, no, we're going to lose too many jobs, but they're very impressed with the steam engine, so they build 22 kilometres or 22 American miles of track. You have to look up, I think it's 22 miles. In 10 years, they have 22,000 miles of tracks, and the rest of history, and America becomes the superpower because they just take it all. Jefferson goes and the rest is history. But it is interesting because you read that and it could have been, you could take out the dates and put 2017 about I could name the politicians in this country saying globalisation's a bad thing, we need to get away from it. Go and read your history and see how America became the great country it was and the superpower into the Second World War. And it started from a premise of being against globalisation. So it is very interesting, but the skills now are different. We don't need Eisenhower's anymore. I'm not sure we need Donald Trump's either, but we need somewhere in between all that. We need different kinds of leadership skills. So I am very optimistic about this next generation because they're very healthy. They're incredibly well educated and they understand cross-cultural issues and the politics of difference, whereas our generations and our grandparents didn't understand that and had different views.
And I want to be optimistic. I think your point as well is you can't ignore it, you can't bury it, and it's not going to happen. And we've seen, you mentioned Uber and Airbnb and various other. We look at what's happening to some of our media organisations in Australia at the moment that didn't think, went forward thinking enough and seeing what happened, buried their heads in the sand. So I just hope as a society, education and the like government, we are not burying our heads in the sand and we've got our eyes open to what will come in the next 10 to 15 years.
And challenges the workforce is not just one generation. So you've got younger people who are very attuned to this, but if you follow through on some of those trends, you've got perhaps lots of people in their 40s and 50s who might be displaced, who have been working in a certain sector for 20 or 30 years. And how do we engage with and make sure we get productive capacity out of those people as well, not just those who happen to be
How do you
entering.
reskill them?
Exactly.
My mother is 93. I use this example all the time. And when she was 85, we gave her an iPad. She now speaks fluent Spanish and she very ostentatiously reads Spanish novels. She lives with my sister in London and she employs the cleaner they have and she only employs Spanish cleaners. My mother then had to go to hospital for a small operation. No one could communicate with the cleaner because we don't speak Spanish. And it just shows you, so the cross-skilling, I think the cross-skilling we have to do from zero to whenever you concede defeat and go to your maker, whoever that is, you're learning and learning and learning. And if I had to say the biggest skill everyone will learn is the capacity to reskill and to enjoy doing it. And if you can do that, you will rule the world.
It's a really good point, and this is something we actually we extol at work at LinkedIn as well, a lot with career development and talking about transformation, which is a big tenet of ours, and it's this adaptability. It's so the great analogy I heard and what I actually stole and now use quite often is the ladder versus the jungle gym. So the jungle gym is very broad and almost like a pyramid, and that's how you should view your career and your skills. You should be working in marketing, in sales, you should be working in technical areas, you should be getting all sorts of different skills, street smarts and the like to make you very, very agile and be able to be flexible rather than the corporate ladder in one place and very technical, because that one can drop very, very quickly. And I think that is what it's all about in the future as well. It's that adaptability, broad skills, and not tying yourself to one ladder.
I think for me, most people in the room have probably had to reinvent themselves at some point and maybe several times over. The change that we're seeing now, it's just that the issue is the rate and how rapid the change is. So I've got a lot of staff that sort of start a conversation about digital disruption. And I say, well, it's not new. Henry Ford disrupted the horse industry. So that was a long, long time ago. But the rate of change, I was in Santa Monica 2 days ago, and there's an Apple store there, and it's a big, big store, and there's a lot of people in it. There was a Tesla showroom. It was smaller, but the ratio of people was about the same. And for the life of me, when I'm driving down the Geelong Road, I think, why is someone building a new petrol station? Because I think in about 10 years' time, there won't be a big demand for petrol. And yet we're still building big petrol stations. So the rate of change is the thing that, the adaptability part of it is how prepared we are to change, or how willing we are to change quickly and reinvent or redesign ourselves and the things that we do.
And if we don't, someone else will. That's what history says.
Excellent. Got a couple of minutes left. Would anyone like to ask a question from the audience? If so, Sophie's got a microphone. If you just give us your name and question for the panel.
So I'm Tim Simmons from Small Business Victoria. I've heard a lot today about what this means for education. I see what this means for larger organisations. Do you have any comments on what these findings mean for small businesses, particularly with the rise of the gigging economy with micro businesses?
I mean, to a large extent, small businesses are the ones that can exploit these advantages, and that's what happened. To an extent, what's happened, and some of those small businesses have become very large quickly. But we are in an environment where our corporate structure is changing more rapidly than it was 20 or 30 years ago. LinkedIn, an example. And whether it's small or large, I think it's relevant. But if you think of large corporate structures and how long it takes to actually adapt, small business can actually get some competitive advantage from, the greater, the move to greater use of knowledge workers and soft skills, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is made for small business. So credentials, particularly looking at how you would validate and curate what you've done, it needs to be affordable, and small medium enterprise is clearly where we would be thinking that we are educating a lot of people for, is as things either uber big or small, and that gouging of the middle is probably what's going to happen if you look at where the trends are going. So how does small business, without spending billions of dollars, get the people they need for this task, that little task there? It'll be something else. They don't want, they don't want a big degree. They want a skill, auditing or soil science, I don't know, pick a thing. And they want that thing, they don't want anything else. LinkedIn is where you go and tick those boxes.
A lot of small businesses are family owned and family run, and I think these skills are as essential in that environment than as they are in BHP. And often they might be lacking in that environment because the assumption is the family will get on well. But as the business tends to grow, that's when the problems arise. And if you don't have these skills practiced in the family business when it's small, it's going to be very hard to not only grow the business but have the right culture in the business. And I think probably the one word that was missing for me in the mix of soft skills was culture. And I think that is an essential part of any successful business operation. If you can have good communication, you can have adaptability and a whole range of things, but if the culture is not right and the person is not fitting and working within that culture and not practicing what the organisation is aspiring to, it's going to be very difficult for them to become part of the team.
And I think you mentioned the gig economy. One of the challenges with the gig economy is, whether it's organisations or individuals looking for the gig, is how do you establish whether someone has that particular capability or skill that you're looking for that gig? And this is where we see the emergence of micro-credentials as a way to provide some measurement around that. So we see it as a really important enabler of the gig economy.
Just to follow up your last remarks, Simon, the credential issue and the micro-credential, university is obviously one of their key value adds has always been credentialing skills. We're talking now about whatever we call them, but I'll keep calling them soft skills for the time being. What do you believe the role of the micro-credential, i.e. attesting that a certain person either coming into a job or growing in a job has got those soft skills? Is that just something we can leave to the person, the employer and the work colleagues to say, yeah, they're pretty good at it?
I think it's very important. If you can show a potential employer that someone's got those soft skills, which are vital for work of tomorrow and success and productivity and profitability within your organisation, that credential is essential. It's a very, very good way to do it. I think you talking about your interview techniques and really interviewing for those soft skills, if you like, was really, really pertinent as well. But combined with some credentials is incredibly important. And I've said it a few times that on LinkedIn, soft skills get endorsed 9 times higher than the hard skills. So people clearly want some sort of credential there and want to be able to acknowledge either other people or themselves for them.
As you know, I've drunk the Kool-Aid on credentials, so... do we have one more question? Yes.
Yeah, Andrew Belmont from BT, not Bankers Trust, British Telecom. The question I have is, how much of this can be taught in reality? So, when I think of soft skills, I think of street smarts. I think it's something that majority of it comes through growing up. It comes through negotiating with your childhood friends. It comes through influencing people, it comes through communication, it goes all the way through your whole childhood until you become an adult. So I'm not saying that I don't feel that this can be taught, but then if you can teach it, how much of it is sincere? So in an interview, yes, I can sit there and rehearse all my soft skills and make you convinced that I have those skills. But in reality, I've got the job. Do I really, really have those soft skills? Because I think there's a large part of it which is inherent. It can't be taught. It has to be through experience. So I'm just curious as to anyone got a view on how much it can really be taught. So the methodology can be taught maybe, but how much of it is really absorbed and you think we used in your life?
And those attributes we showed before that was from the World Economic Forum of the key characteristics and criteria from the education system. So some of this actually is not just university, it's really from the school system. And I think we are seeing a change in our school system as well, from going from just technical literacy, numeracy to other broader skills like adaptability and perseverance and teamwork. So I think education systems are recognising that these things are important, and the attempt is there to try and teach them. I think you're right. On interviews, maybe these things can be full, but it does show up in the workplace. I mean, they can only happen so long. With some people, it's probably inherent, but I think I think it's being taken seriously through the whole education spectrum.
I see what you mean there. I mean, I think all knowledge is a little bit inherent, isn't it? Some people are smarter than others. Some people pick things up quicker than others. But I think those skills can be taught. Some people pick them up quicker than others. But, for instance, we're a global organisation. We do a lot of our communication, which is a soft skill, over video conference. And that is a skill that you can learn. How to do it effectively. Seriously, how you should have the camera on your upper body, how you engage with people in other markets in particular that aren't there in person, asking questions, getting them involved. And these are really important with a global company. This video conference communication is vital, and it is something that you can actually learn.
How do you convince your 15-year-old son that it's important?
Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe take away his phone. Yeah.
But I think that's why, one of the things that we're wanting to do with credentials is exactly that. So, there's a limit to what you will learn before you're 17. But if I had to think about what is my most significant skill now, I don't think I was ever a very persuasive person, but I've learned to be very persuasive, and to be able to negotiate and to get to a point where you win. I'm a scientist. Scientists are singular. You work on your own. You go for truth, and you take no prisoners. Well, that's not a way to work in a team. So you have to learn other skills, and I learned those on the job. That's what credentials is about. That I've done this job for 5 years and I've learned to negotiate with people across 4 cultures. That's worth having in a small, medium enterprise where you're just starting to export into pick a nation. It's worth having someone who is tolerant, resilient, who will listen, who will go and look up what words mean, or will understand the sensitivities of dialect between Shanghai and Beijing, for example. That's a great skill. You'd buy people I would buy people like that. We do buy people like that. This is what I did in this job and here's what I did. That's all we're interested in, is that thing. So I think there are things that you can do. I think what the 15-year-old is showing is a great thing. This is what I'm interested in right now, and this is what I'm going to do. Never buck interest. What are you interested in, and have you credentialed some of those interests? Interests change, but credentialing an interest is not a bad thing. Values should never change. Interest should change as you live, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to get across the line. What these 2 young women sitting in the front here will learn certain skills. They may change industries. What are the credential things they'll take from the industry they're in now to an industry that they might go to in 10 or 15 years' time? You have no idea what they do. That would be worth credentialing in a certain way, I think. And that's what I think, that we can't expect every student now who does a degree to come and do a monster postgraduate degree to credential something that they could learn in a bite-sized crunch at a much more affordable price in a shorter amount of time wherever they are, because the world has changed. And so we've got to look at how people learn in a very different way now, because that's what the market is asking for. That's what the consumer wants. The consumer is the customer is the student. And I wouldn't underestimate how much you do learn in a workplace. What we often don't do is then value it and give it value and meaning by curating it in some way so someone can transfer it somewhere else. That's what a transferable skill is, evidence. And somebody has to assure that evidence, and that's what DeakinCo is doing as part of its credential job. And I do see it becoming extraordinarily important, particularly, and I feel bad I didn't mention small, medium enterprise, where those sorts of things, because they won't have the scale to do the assessment and testing, they're not a university or a big four bank or big four consultancy firm to do those things in a different way. They'll need to buy them.
And I think that's where we'd suggest the shift is. The shift includes learning at universities and other education providers, but it's learning on the job. And then
learning in the home, it doesn't matter wherever
that
it
comes
is.
from. Yeah. But then a reliable or effective micro-credentialing system is actually looking at the evidence. So can you demonstrate that you've applied that skill in a work context or in a meaningful context? And if you've got a valid assessment methodology around that, then the credentials really do become valuable currency for you in progressing your career or getting a job somewhere else. We have gone a fair way over time, so I might wrap it up there. But if you can if I could please get your thanks for the panel, but also for Jess and for Sophie and Georgie from the DeakinCo team who've done a lot of work bringing this together. But if you'd thank everyone.